Across the galactic expanse, Earth was barely a footnote, a primitive blue world tucked in the Orion Spur, known more for its volatile biosphere than any strategic value. To the Galactic Union, it was an ecological oddity, a planet that had never been properly terraformed, still plagued by chaotic weather systems, untamed beasts, and thick wilderness teeming with microbes. The Union had long since mastered environmental harmony. Its core worlds were sterilized, ordered, optimized for comfort and efficiency. In that cold, gleaming perfection, Earth stood out like a muddy boot print on a marble floor. When Earth was offered provisional entry into the Union, it wasn't out of respect or awe, it was bureaucracy. A procedural gesture to an emerging species that had stumbled into faster-than-light travel and made enough noise to be noticed. Behind closed doors, Earth's candidacy sparked laughter. Footage of rainforests choking in mist, animals roaring through dense underbrush, and storms tearing across coastlines were passed around command centers like comedy reels. What kind of intelligent species still lived alongside apex predators? Who tolerated humidity thick enough to jam nanotech or insects that could bite through biosuit mesh? The Union's military elite, forged in clean orbital arenas and antiseptic war halls, mocked it endlessly. Commanders, veterans of cybernetic siege doctrines and artificial moon offensives, saw Earth's wilds as an evolutionary glitch. A place where nature hadn't been subdued, where flora grew without control and fauna behaved without programming. Earth wasn't a battlefield, it was a joke. Soldiers joked about the jungle as a rite of passage, something to scare rookies with. Entire simulation programs were created to mimic Earth's biomes, most ending with the user rage quitting or glitching out due to algorithmic incompatibility. "Why train in madness?" they said. "Real war is clean, calculated, not this chaos." So when Earth's governments invited the Union's elite to observe human military training in natural terrain, it was received with smirking acceptance. Not as a serious diplomatic exchange, but as an opportunity to demonstrate superiority. Union High Command dispatched select reconnaissance regiments, Zarn Heavy Scouts, Drathan Biomex, and the Heliox Analytical Cadre. They were not prepared for battle. They were equipped to record data and indulge curiosity. They believed they were stepping into a backwater simulation, at worst, a mild inconvenience. Their briefings warned of unpredictable weather, unsanitary conditions, and terrain obstructions. Nothing about human tactics. Nothing about the threat. Before deployment, Union analysts reviewed countless hours of human military footage. They saw men in camouflage crawling through muck, diving into rivers, hurling themselves into thickets of thorns. No exosuits. No orbital support. Just grit and coordination. Inefficient, the Heliox commented. An obsession with outdated warfare. They failed to understand what they were seeing. The human approach wasn't flawed, it was deliberate. They weren't fighting against nature. They were fighting with it. But that insight never surfaced. Arrogance strangled curiosity. To the Union, Earth was a curiosity at best, a reminder of a primitive past better forgotten. A species still playing soldier in the dirt, while the galaxy had evolved beyond physical confrontation. Union officers theorized the purpose of Earth's wilderness. Some believed it was maintained out of cultural nostalgia, others thought it was simple neglect. But none believed it was intentional. Not one of them understood the jungle as a crucible. A forge where humans reshaped themselves to survive under constant pressure, environmental, physical, and psychological. They scoffed at the notion that jungles could teach strategy. That deserts bred discipline. That frozen wastelands refined patience. They had stripped those variables from their own training centuries ago. Earth's methods seemed absurdly inefficient. Why learn to move silently through undergrowth when one could just deploy aerial scans? Why memorize terrain patterns when satellites mapped everything in real time? They had forgotten that technology could fail. That instinct could not be hacked. Union tacticians dismissed Earth's soldiers as relics, individuals trained to survive conditions no sane world would allow. They couldn't grasp the mindset of a fighter who embraced discomfort, who became more dangerous the deeper they moved into darkness. To them, war was sterile, quantified, digital. To humans, it was something primal. And no simulation, no algorithm, no classroom in the stars could prepare the Union for what lay ahead. When the first drop teams descended into Earth's untamed regions, they did so with confidence bordering on contempt. What they encountered would dismantle that certainty piece by piece. But in that moment, before the reports of disappearances, before the footage was blacked out, before the Union command fell silent, they still believed they were the apex. Earth knew better. It always had. The drop pods landed with precision, dispersing in carefully calculated intervals across Earth's densest jungles. The Union recon units emerged in coordinated silence, sensors activated, drones launched, protocols running flawlessly. They believed they were walking into untamed terrain, armed with centuries of biomechanical dominance. Every scout had neural uplinks, terrain assist boots, auto-targeting visors, and atmospheric filters calibrated for alien ecosystems. What they didn't have was understanding. The moment their boots touched the forest floor, nothing responded as expected. Their scanners pulsed, returned static, then recalibrated and failed again. Vegetation shifted in ways that couldn't be mapped. The canopy above absorbed signal, light, and sound like a living blanket. No wind. Just a wall of air so thick that motion became labor. Within minutes, their synthetic fabrics were saturated, their cooling systems overloaded, their boots sinking into moss that felt unnaturally deep. Drones deployed upward were snatched mid-flight by branches or vanished without a trace. Automated patrol routes twisted, rendering maps obsolete in real time. The jungle refused to be observed. Optical camouflage flickered under the moisture. Audio sensors picked up constant movement but no discernible life forms. Thousands of signatures flickered around them, none of which could be classified. Life here didn't announce itself. It waited. The alien units pressed forward, keeping formation, their training reassuring them this was temporary. Yet hours passed, and not a single expected variable held. Insects ignored deterrents. Microbes bypassed biofilters. An invisible cloud of life pressed against every exposed surface. The jungle didn't resist their presence. It absorbed it. Communication lagged. Signals between units grew erratic. Synced positioning lost cohesion. Time felt inconsistent. Some reported temporal anomalies, others reported mental distortion, colors too saturated, movement at the edges of vision. Standard issue stabilizers administered neurobalancers, but the reports persisted. A heliox analyst in the second wave noted a subtle increase in atmospheric particulates, pollen, spores, unknown biotic motes, millions of them. Nothing lethal, just omnipresent. He called it atmospheric consciousness. Despite no direct engagements, personnel began disappearing. One vanished while stepping around a fallen tree. Another while scanning a crevice. No sound, no struggle, just absence. Biosignals ceased. Recordings ended mid-frame. Command assumed localized environmental hazards, sinkholes, carnivorous flora, perhaps residual tectonics. More reinforcements were sent to regroup and retrieve data. The new units moved in larger formations, using flamethrowers and sonic displacers to clear a perimeter. But the jungle adapted. Burned sections regrew within hours. Cleared zones filled with fog. Sonic pulses rebounded unpredictably, causing internal disorientation. Marching became exhausting. Troops reported dehydration despite fluid intakes, vertigo despite stabilizers, and a recurring sensation that they were being watched. No life form was visible. No enemy had engaged. Yet every soldier knew they weren't alone. Command ordered camps. Artificial barriers were deployed, UV lighting installed, sensor webs laid. That night, every automated system went dark. Batteries drained. Optics scrambled. One by one, the perimeter collapsed. When morning came, a third of the force was missing. Remaining footage showed brief, silent breaches. Shadowed figures passing through foliage. Movements too fast, too precise. Humanoid shapes, camouflaged so deeply in the environment that they seemed born of it. The first confirmed contact occurred without announcement. A patrol stumbled upon alien corpses, not their own, placed methodically in a triangle, throats slit with clean incisions. The surrounding trees bore marks, symbols cut into bark with clinical precision. Not alien glyphs. Human patterns. Tactical code. It wasn't a warning. It was a message. Humans were present. Observing. Deciding. Panic set in. Command issued withdrawal protocols, but extraction signals failed. Transport crafts couldn't locate them. Terrain maps collapsed. Even orbiting satellites lost track of surface movements. The jungle had consumed the entire operational grid. A final report, pulled from a surviving helmet log, captured a brief audio exchange. A Heliox officer whispered, voice cracking. "We are not alone. We are being hunted. They move like the trees. They breathe with the fog." Then silence. Back in orbit, analysts reviewed what little data was recovered. All indicators pointed to a single truth: the jungle wasn't neutral. It wasn't passive. It was an extension of human warfare. An environment weaponized through knowledge, patience, and brutal simplicity. These weren't soldiers lost to weather. They were dismantled by expertise honed in nature so complex it defied simulation. What the Union failed to see before deployment now became unavoidable. Earth's wilderness was not an obstacle to human development. It was its forge. And within it, the most elite warriors didn't fight nature. They became it. They moved without sound, not because of stealth protocols or advanced cloaking, but because silence was second nature. These weren't typical soldiers. They were the culmination of centuries of survival training, molded by extremes, shaped by wars fought in places machines failed to function. Their advantage wasn't in equipment, it was in instinct. Where the alien forces relied on sensors and data, these humans read the bend of leaves, the depth of footprints, the changes in bird calls. They didn't scan the jungle, they listened to it. The first engagement wasn't marked by gunfire. It was absence. An entire alien patrol vanished, their location last pinged at the edge of a ravine. Recovery teams found only torn armor and drag marks leading into roots. No sign of a fight. No signatures. No energy trails. Just clean disappearance. The only clue left was a combat knife wedged into a tree, its hilt wrapped in jungle camouflage. The blade was human-issued. Before the aliens could react, more units began reporting anomalies, weapon locks jamming at critical moments, rations spoiled despite sealed storage, personal comms whispering unfamiliar words in multiple Earth languages. Psychological evaluations showed rising stress levels. Discipline fractured. Night patrols refused to move. The jungle hadn't changed, but the enemy now lived within it. Humans didn't launch assaults. They isolated targets. One scout would slip through brush undetected, marking positions with threads of mud only they could follow. Another would reroute water flow to force movement. When the aliens adjusted, choke points awaited them. Traps designed with surgical cruelty, silent, brutal, efficient. No signature. No heat. Just kinetic force and precision. The Union's elite began dying in seconds. A glint of movement, a rustle overhead, then gone. No time to react. The jungle offered no echoes, no confirmation. Squad leaders issued orders with trembling voices. High command rerouted resources to reinforce ground presence. But increasing numbers only accelerated the loss rate. Humans adapted immediately, splitting their forces, coordinating without words, using animal mimicry to signal each other. Every attack was calculated. Every retreat bait. They didn't chase, they herded. Drone footage recovered mid-transmission revealed frames of motionless trees, then a blur, a human figure in full ghillie, crawling on vertical bark like it was horizontal ground. It moved within the wind's rhythm, not against it. A shot rang, and the drone spiraled downward. Review teams were stunned not by the kill, but by what the footage revealed. These were not mindless ambushes. They were tacticians operating on a level that Union doctrines had no counters for. Captured alien officers were returned days later, tied but uninjured. They hadn't been interrogated. They were observed, then released. One officer described it as a lesson. They wanted us to understand we were prey, he said. It wasn't about killing us. It was about showing us how easily they could have. Every word delivered with hollow eyes and tremors no medication could stabilize. Union scientists reviewed the terrain and discovered that humans weren't just surviving in it, they were reshaping it. Trails appeared and vanished daily. Natural growth accelerated in chosen areas. The terrain bent subtly to human intent. Indigenous life ignored them, moved with them. Their camouflage wasn't just visual, it was biological. They smelled like the forest, sounded like it, disappeared into it without trace. The elite warriors were from multiple nations, each bringing a different discipline. Some operated in pairs, silent as mist. Others set up decoys that lured entire battalions into dead zones. One unit was tracked for 2 hours before its pursuers walked into an ambush they never saw. The only survivor spoke of shadows that moved like animals, but struck like machines. Alien weapons proved unreliable. Precision rifles clogged with pollen. Energy-based arms drew attention from heat-seeking predators or malfunctioned in humidity. Human weapons, by contrast, were stripped down, low-tech, durable, brutally effective. Knives were favored. Silent takedowns preferred. Ammunition was conserved. Combat was personal. The psychological toll deepened. Alien troops began disobeying commands, forming tight circles at night, sleeping in shifts of 30 minutes, eyes scanning every shadow. Whispers of the ghosts circulated in private channels. Some claimed humans were biologically altered. Others believed they were descendants of jungle spirits. Even AI advisors began flagging encounters as unquantifiable threats. Data collected confirmed one thing: the special forces were not using superior gear or numerical advantage. Their edge came from a relationship with the environment so deep it blurred the line between soldier and ecosystem. They used everything: wind, terrain, even enemy behavior. And they never revealed their full presence. For every engagement, 10 were avoided. For every soldier seen, 5 remained hidden. The Union hadn't lost a battle. It had entered a domain where the rules of war no longer applied. In Earth's jungles, combat wasn't won by force. It was dictated by understanding. And the humans understood everything. The Union, unwilling to accept humiliation, escalated. What began as reconnaissance turned into full deployment. Dozens of regiments were dropped into Earth's biomes with orders to secure zones, eliminate resistance, and re-establish control. The Union's response was overwhelming: armored walkers, terrain-adaptive vehicles, satellite-linked artillery. They weren't just targeting jungles anymore. Arctic circles, deserts, wetlands, and high-altitude regions were included. The assumption was simple: greater force, wider presence, absolute victory. In the Sahara, heat-adaptive units collapsed within days. Fine sand infiltrated their internal systems, clogging servos and frying circuits. Optical systems shorted under the relentless sun. Recon armor turned into ovens. Human desert units struck with brutal precision, using mirages, wind, and patience. Snipers buried beneath dunes fired once, then vanished. Mobile artillery disappeared in dust storms that changed direction without warning, guided by humans who predicted them by scent and sky. In the Arctic, cold-adapted biomechs slowed to a crawl. Lubricants froze. Environmental seals fractured. Energy reserves drained too fast to sustain warmth. Human operatives, wrapped in layered silence, struck from ice shelves. They used the auroras to blind sensors, the terrain to fracture formations. One alien captain was found frozen upright, eyes open, weapon in hand, never having seen the attack that ended him. Underwater deployments failed faster. The Union's submersible drones mapped oceans in seconds, but mapping was not understanding. Currents shifted with deceptive force, pulling crafts into deep trenches. Human divers moved without trace, knives replacing guns, targeting exposed cables and propulsion systems. Sabotage was near perfect. Wreckage littered ocean floors, no survivors, no resistance detected. Just the quiet work of those who trained in the black silence of the deep. Tropical environments were now classified as red zones. Every attempt to secure them only accelerated losses. The jungle no longer felt passive, it pressed inward. Supply lines collapsed. Medical emergencies spiked. Troops began reporting confusion, dizziness, hallucinations. AI sent to analyze conditions corrupted rapidly, logging contradictory data. Command flagged the reports as psychological breakdown. But black box recordings painted a different picture. Teams wiped out systematically, their last moments marked by silence, then chaos. Union war doctrine collapsed under Earth's strategy. Human forces never met them in direct confrontation. They fragmented, isolated, and dismantled units in waves. Their operations were decentralized, yet perfectly coordinated. Without satellites or comm relays, they functioned with efficiency that bordered on clairvoyance. They anticipated movements, exploited errors instantly, and retreated without leaving a footprint. Alien generals tried conventional fixes. They introduced suppression zones, chemical fogs, EMP pulses, sound barriers. Each tactic had temporary effects. Humans adapted, shifted locations, changed patterns. Every environmental manipulation was answered with counters that showed familiarity, not guesswork. It became evident these responses weren't improvised. They were rehearsed. Command centers finally identified the truth. These weren't isolated tactics. Earth had prepared for this. Not weeks or months in advance, but decades. Military installations hidden across wilderness zones were stocked, fortified, and linked to terrain. Training exercises weren't simulations. They were rehearsals for real-world infiltration. Doctrine emphasized terrain control over firepower, misdirection over confrontation, and deep camouflage over armor. The Union had walked into a planet-sized ambush. Captured data showed human doctrine wasn't centered around victory through dominance. It revolved around survival, disruption, and strategic pain. Every trap served dual purposes: inflict damage and sow confusion. Every attack was a lesson. Enemy morale was the primary target. Kill counts were secondary. One unit could destabilize an entire battalion by eliminating command links, then letting fear spread. Morale in Union ranks plummeted. Combat efficiency metrics dropped. Some divisions refused to deploy. Others requested reassignment off-planet. Rumors of elite human operatives with supernatural abilities spiraled. Soldiers believed the jungle had minds of its own, that humans didn't operate in nature, they were extensions of it. The phrase, "Don't follow the quiet," began circulating, an unspoken warning that stillness meant death. Attempts to regroup resulted in further losses. Orbital drops misfired. Navigation signals looped. Evacuation sites became kill zones. Union forces, stretched thin and fragmented, began requesting full extraction. High command resisted. But the losses were impossible to spin. Tactical superiority meant nothing without control. And Earth refused to be controlled. Back-channel transmissions between Union strategists debated planetary classification upgrades. Earth moved from Class 3 primitive to Class Omega hazard. Discussions of containment replaced conquest. Some proposed quarantining the planet entirely. Others suggested diplomacy, a silent acknowledgement of defeat without formal surrender. But no consensus formed. The damage had been done. The Union hadn't underestimated Earth's technology. It had underestimated its will. No algorithm could simulate the patience of a hunter raised in survival. No model could replicate generations of learning to use the land not as shelter, but as a weapon. Earth hadn't responded with equal force. It had responded with a plan older than the Union itself. And now, across every terrain, that plan was still unfolding. Reports from Earth ceased abruptly. No final messages, no distress calls, just silence. Entire divisions had vanished, fleets hovering in low orbit unable to establish contact with surviving ground units. What remained of the once confident invasion force was data fragments, wreckage, and the growing realization that Earth had never been conquered. It had absorbed the offensive like rain into soil. The Galactic Union convened an emergency council. What began as strategic assessment spiraled into crisis management. High Command attempted to downplay the outcome, citing environmental anomalies and logistical errors. But the reality couldn't be concealed. A single planet had crippled multiple veteran regiments, destabilized morale across the ranks, and exposed the fragility of Union doctrine. Worse, it hadn't been done through superior technology. It was will, terrain, and discipline. Earth was reclassified. No longer a minor civilization under observation, it was marked as an active zone of military parity. A new term emerged: contingency-grade ecosystem. Union scientists argued that the terrain itself was too volatile, that the biological complexity created variables no simulation could predict. But commanders understood it went beyond unpredictability. It was intent. The wilderness had been used tactically. The resistance wasn't incidental. It had been orchestrated by those who knew precisely how to break confidence without firing volleys. No retaliation followed from Earth. No demand for surrender. No broadcast claiming victory. It remained silent, untouched, watching. Intelligence flagged this as psychological warfare. The absence of gloating or negotiation amplified uncertainty. Rumors spread quickly among Union ranks. Earth wasn't a nation-state, it was a mindset. Those who survived the campaign carried scars deeper than physical trauma. Some refused reassignment. Others abandoned service. The stories they told weren't about battles but about being hunted by an invisible force that moved without pattern and struck without mercy. Recruits in distant systems whispered about forests that moved. Deserts that swallowed machines whole. Oceans that listened. The phrase, "never land on blue," became unspoken doctrine among drop captains. Political entities began lobbying for diplomatic neutrality with Earth. Colonies pulled funding from further campaigns. Strategists explored peace offerings disguised as research missions. Still, Earth made no reply. It didn't seek alliance or expansion. It made no demands. That silence carried more weight than fleets. Within the Union's military academies, Earth became a case study. Not as a failure of strategy, but as a fundamental shift in understanding warfare. Cadets were taught that terrain wasn't background, it was weaponry. That unpredictability wasn't a flaw, it was advantage. Earth's doctrine was added to theoretical combat models, though none could replicate its full effects. Simulations based on Earth tactics broke prediction AI models within minutes. Patterns collapsed under human improvisation. A new unit was formed, the Adaptive Response Corps, composed of specialists trained under the philosophy of Earth combat. Their first simulations against Union forces ended in overwhelming victory for the ARC units. Their methods were unconventional: delayed strikes, environmental sabotage, decentralized leadership, psychological stress factors. Observers noted their approach felt familiar. Too familiar. Many of them had been trained by veterans of the Earth campaign. And still, Earth remained isolated. Orbiting satellites detected constant movement in its wild zones. Military operations continued, drills maintained, terrain reshaped subtly day by day. Surveillance couldn't confirm the number or location of Special Forces units. Some assumed they had returned to cities. Others believed they had never left the wild. Not because they were ordered to remain, but because they were part of it. Union policies shifted. Earth was no longer marked for intervention. Instead, it was labeled Non-Interference Zone. Advisories were issued to all exploratory vessels. Do not enter atmospheric range. Do not engage with surface forces. Do not assume terrain is neutral. Officially, it was caution. Unofficially, it was surrender. Across the galaxy, stories of Earth spread like wildfire. Not tales of conquest or diplomacy, but of a world that taught humility through silence. A world that needed no threats, no demands, and no retaliation to establish dominance. Veterans spoke of eyes in the dark, of breathing forests, of human operators whose faces were never seen, whose names were never known, but whose presence could be felt like the weight of judgment itself. In the Union's Central Archive, a note was added to Earth's file. A final advisory. 3 lines, unsigned and unedited. Earth does not forgive arrogance. Earth does not announce strength. Earth does not forget trespass. From that point on, no force attempted return. The jungle had spoken. The galaxy listened,